Yeah, I'm going to call this meeting order.
Hold on, Leonard. Turn this on. Okay.
So you're going to be that person that approves things?
Yes, you just cue me,
okay.
give me the...
Alright, so we need an approval of today's agenda.
I move that we approve.
Okay, I'll second. The minutes, these are the past minutes, but
You might want to wait till Joanne.
yeah,
Switch
Joanne's
lines.
on those.
Yeah,
yeah,
just on those.
Joanne was here. We can bypass that though,
Yeah, just.
and come back to
Okay.
she showed.
There she is.
Hi there.
I had to do several loops around the parking lot to find a
Yeah.
space.
It's not the best place.
I paid for parking today. Don't usually, but yeah, I just pulled up to a meter and paid my $4 and I was happy for 4 hours.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good morning, how are you doing?
We're at approval of the minutes of our last meeting, so since you were here, have a chance to look them over if you want. And we can do that in a minute. I can go back to that.
I think I read this on the show before. I make a motion with her.
Second. I'm substituting.
On purpose. You know, there waits today.
No. All right, we're at public comments. Does anyone have public comments?
Jim Larson.
Jim?
Big surprise. I'm going to read what I have here because it's easier. CPC case number 09317 is the only complaint I've ever filed against any police department. I filed the complaint for 2 reasons. The first was due to the Chief of Police and his command staff's callous disinterest in examining the APD system that failed in its response to the CYFD referral regarding Victoria Martens. Second, they expressed similar disregard for determining and correcting issues regarding the detailed but fabricated information regarding 2 APD detectives' alleged interview with Victoria Martens and her mother as a result of the CYFD referral. The most important anticipated outcome of my complaint was the identification of potential policy and procedural refinements to improve 1, the APD procedures and criteria that dismissed the CYFD concerns regarding 10-year-old Victoria Martens without any inquiry at all, and 2, the system that allowed the mythical fabrication and public assertion by 2 persons in the Public Information Office that Martens and her mother were interviewed by 2 APD detectives who found nothing amiss. I have no knowledge of and am not concerned or commenting on the investigation and its results. My comments are intended to convince this subcommittee that if there are policy recommendations, there is no better time or case for the POB to use their authority cited in the Police Oversight Ordinance. This means to communicate the POB policy recommendations in a document signed by the POB chairperson and sent directly to the City Council and the Chief of Police, and not to simply include such recommendations as part of the CPC report to the complainant and chief, as has been a past practice. Let me briefly try to demonstrate why I think this is necessary. I've reviewed the POBC and CPOA policy and procedures, many CPC citizen letters, POB meeting minutes, other documents, monitor reports, as well as the city's July 18th, 2017 response to the court in the CASA case. Not surprisingly, the indisputable conclusion from my reviews is that consistent and well-intentioned as the POB efforts have been in attempting to establish a professional collaboration for evaluation and subsequent incorporation of their policy recommendations by APD, they have largely failed. Recall that on October 23, 2016, Beth A. Moore, then chairperson of the Police Oversight Board, wrote to Assistant United States Attorney Elizabeth Martinez, citing 4 major POB issues for the CASA status hearing. Significantly, one of those issues was, quote, APD continues to exclude, ignore, and directly thwart the POB's attempts to contribute to APD policy. More recently, the city's July 17th CASA response filing begins with a statement. It is important to clarify the difference between an informal request and a formal request offered by representatives of the CPOA and the POB. This is in response to CPOA concerns regarding rejection or denial of 2 specific recommendations, and they were not submitted to the City Council. The city filing document further states they recommend that, quote, policy suggestions are submitted in the established process with a request to the chief. I found no reference to an established process other than a paragraph, 288, of the CASA agreement, which begins, the agency shall make recommendations to the chief regarding APD's policy and training. Notably, the CPOA policy recommendation subsection of the City Police Oversight Ordinance states that POB shall, by a majority vote, recommend policies relating to APD, and those policy recommendations shall be submitted to APD and the City Council, and that more than 50% of its time shall be dedicated to this policy recommendation subsection. A draft document on the POB proposed ordinance changes has the following observation from a City Council staff attorney dated April 6, 2017, relating to the POB policy recommendations. He stated, you gave a few examples of the chief not responding to policy recommendations. At the same time, I don't think the council has received any of those. This requires the CPOA, this referring to the statute that he was talking about, this requires the CPOA to give them to the council at the same time you give them to APD. The purpose of this section was to keep the council on notice about APD's responsiveness, or lack thereof, perhaps, that's my comment, and to give it the opportunity to adopt policies itself where appropriate. Following this process could help with an apparent logjam here. As recently as last week, a city councilor said in response to my question that to his knowledge the POB has not referred a policy or referred policy recommendations for the APD to the City Council. The councilman followed up by saying they would welcome such policy recommendations. On the other hand, I was told the CPOA has always included the president of the City Council as a recipient of CPOA recommendations. This leaves me a little bewildered and concerned about the rigor of the procedure of referral of POB policy recommendations. The POB should not continue to rely on the ongoing dubious assurances that policy issues are on the cusp of mutual agreement regarding the POB's role in policy development or recommendations for APD. Recall the city's admonition in its CASA response letter that it's important to clarify between informal and formal requests offered by representatives of the CPOA and POB. This case has received a considerable amount of public interest, press coverage, and editorial opining. If there's a serious policy recommendation in this case, communicating it as a formal request from the POB chairperson to the City Council and not just the Chief of Police would be acutely appropriate and in compliance with the Police Oversight Ordinance. Getting close to the end. Also, by submitting any recommendations, the Chief has to respond in writing within 45 days to the City Council and not just the POB. His response must indicate whether the recommendations will be followed through standard operating procedures or should be adopted as the policy by the City Council, or he has to explain any reasons why such policy recommendations will not be followed or should not be adopted. In conclusion, I want to read a short transcribed quotes taken from recordings published by the Albuquerque Journal in support of their articles after the police department said that they had misunderstood their statements. This is a quote from Fred Duran. Yes, the mom had told us that there was nothing going on in the home, that she removed the boyfriend, and that she told him not to return, which is what we would have told her to do anyway. So she was self-initiating, and at that point, and when the detective spoke to the kids, they didn't make any allegations that anything happened. Then Selena Espinosa said they went and talked to mom and even talked to the little girl, and there was nothing to report. Finally, in response to a question, has there been any talk about anything that should have been done differently in the wake of all of this? Selena Espinosa responded, and that's always the goal. We don't want anybody to have to endure any type of abuse, period. But right at this point, we really haven't. It would be so much easier if I could just give you that one thing that we or somebody or some committee or some agency could have done differently. But at this time, everybody did everything they were supposed to do. Thank you for your listening and consideration.
No, and we're going to talk about that case.
Okay.
Okay, so I think some of your concerns are going to be addressed.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. I guess my question would be, can we have that read at the public comments on Thursday? But we're going to discuss it. I mean,
can we add what Jim just said to the public comments?
Yeah.
So the whole board can hear it? Is that the point? Well, I think that since he's written it down, it would be easy just to make sure that everybody on the board gets it before the meeting.
Okay.
As well. You know, and then if Jim wants to recap it at the meeting, he's welcome to do that.
Yeah, let's do that. I think it's important, even though we're going to discuss the case today. I think your comments are important. You know, so.
I think so.
Okay, so maybe we can do that. Make that part of Michelle's packet, if you will. You know.
And just make sure they know that we're going to discuss it so that they read it ahead of time.
Right. All right. Thank you. CPOA report. Mr. Harness is not here. Are you sitting in for Mr. Harness?
I am, but I didn't have anything to report
Okay.
because I wasn't provided with any documents to report.
I have questions, but they can wait till after we go through the cases.
Okay. So let's go through those. Review of the cases, the administratively closed cases. Any comments on the administratively closed?
I agreed with all of them.
Yeah.
So it's 004-17,
Mm-hmm.
011-17, and 039-17, all of which were appropriately administratively closed in my view.
Okay.
So I make a motion that we concur and recommend to the board that the administratively closed cases be adopted as they're written.
Okay. All in favor?
Is there a second?
There should be a second.
I'm second. I'll second. I'm second.
All in favor?
I'm on second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right.
Now, I've really been looking forward to talking about this case, 093-17, the one that Mr. Larson did. So are you ready for that?
I am ready for cases investigated. 195-16, any issues with that one?
So you want to skip around?
Yeah, no, I'm just going to take it from what they have here.
Oh, okay.
No issues on that one. 195-16.
Yeah, I agreed with it. I didn't see any discipline recommendations when the SOP said that the officer needed to had repeated no-shows in court.
Right.
So there were no discipline recommendations and that concerned me.
not here.
Just
to
sustaining
discuss
it
that.
doesn't do anything. I mean, except put it in his record, so
Okay.
I don't know why there were no discipline recommendations.
Okay. It's not gonna be here on Thursday, is it?
He will be.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
So maybe that's something we'll ask him.
We'll ask him about that.
007, that's 17. Any issue?
It was just a letter to the chief in which we concurred with the IA investigation and their findings.
So really no issues there.
Mm.
Okay. All right, 093-17.
Well, that was a very, Paul, you did the investigation, and I really appreciated how well done that was and how well it was communicated. I think it would be helpful if we could talk a little bit about that, so I'll volunteer to begin. A lot of your concerns are addressed in this letter, and the investigation showed that absolutely Officer D did lie, set up and lie about the involvement of APD, that Cecilia Espinosa did not, was not guilty of making up the lie. She was guilty of repeating the lie that she was told by Officer D. But subsequently, she said that when she discovered the truth, that she went to the chief and that she called the reporter. I don't know if she went to the chief, but she did not go to the reporter. The reporter called her. So she was sustained as well. The recommendation, as I recall, tell me if I'm wrong here, is that go to the policy committee for a formal recommendation. That there has to be a policy change about how to handle cases that come from CYFD. What they discovered was that the decision maker was a civilian about whether or not it should be investigated.
Right.
And there was no checks and balance on a civilian making that decision. He also pointed out that Officer D is a sworn officer and should know the difference. Talked extensively about, not completing a kiss doesn't mean it's not assault, and that in fact they should have gone forward and done an investigation for sure, and that procedurally there was no logic or safety enhanced by a civilian making that call, and that they absolutely could. I mean, the whole argument that Selena promoted was that they can't, and Officer D did as well, that they couldn't just go up and talk to the kid, which of course they
didn't have
can.
probable cause.
Yeah, which of course they can. They don't have to have a warrant for all of that. So Paul's argument and his laying out of this was very complete. I don't know if you have a copy of it.
I don't.
But it was very complete. The only, I agreed, the discipline, I can't remember off the top of my head, I think it was 80 hours for Officer D.
80 hours, yeah.
And a written reprimand and 80-hour suspension. And Director E was a letter of reprimand for false statements, not about the original thing. She was repeating that, but they're distinguishing that she lied afterward about contacting the reporter. They went to extensive trouble, Paul did, to listen to the reporter's tapes, or the interviews that they did, and to really go over every detail that was in there. I really was impressed by that. The only thing I didn't like about the letter was that the discipline was not included in the letter itself, which was a decision I thought we made in this committee to recommend, and that we brought to the board. So I think that the complainant, we already agreed that the complainant should know what the discipline is.
Recommended discipline,
Mm-hmm.
right.
And we haven't completed the turnaround on letters, but I've seen a great improvement on them. I just think that's something that has to be in the structure. So it lists, the letter lists all the different pieces that that Paul went through, everything he looked at, and then one by one talked about how talked about where the chief was, how the chief, where the chief was in meetings where this was revealed, and the subsequent lying by, so when they knew, what they knew, and exactly proving that what they told the public was a lie, and they knew it.
Well, my interactions with Paul when he was taking my statement gave me a lot of confidence that he was going to do a good job. And since we're being recorded, I probably won't say anything smart, Alec. But I really did have a lot of confidence in that. And it's the reason I filed it with the CPOA was I have confidence that they're going to do the right thing. I think there's some process issues that the whole thing has to work through. But I don't think they shy away from doing this. And I want to thank Paul for his work.
I really appreciate it. It's such an important case, such an important issue, and the process was shown to be absolutely dysfunctional. And on such an important issue with the vulnerability of children in the balance, it's not okay that anything should be this dysfunctional, but certainly not this. So my only suggestion is that the suggested discipline needs to be in there. Otherwise, I agree with everything.
We haven't sent the letter out yet.
No, this is just to discuss it when this is a draft.
Yeah, it won't go out until the actual meeting itself, the day after the meeting.
You're right.
itself.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, and I think he can correct that. What we do is we complete the investigation, we make our findings and conclusions, but we leave the recommended discipline to the director. So I don't know if he was just skipped over it or what.
Yeah, well, I think it needs to be part of the process. I think we agreed to that, and I just think the same is true for that there was no discipline recommended on 195-16 either. That's just something we have to get used to putting in there as a process. There was something else you said before. So it's going to the policy committee. That's the recommendation. The policy committee should look at that, and it's not just the process. Correct me if I'm wrong. What are the things you're sending? Obviously, it's the idea of sending to the policy committee the civilian piece and no oversight of the civilian piece. But is there any other part that I missed that you're also sending to the policy committee?
Well, I wanted to, my intention on this, and at least I hope we can carry through with this as a board and as the policy recommendation committee, is that we start to work, everybody starts to work together to come up with a standalone procedure regarding CYFD referrals to APD. Because when I was conducting my investigation, I kept asking the same question that Mr. Larson did. Well, what is the process? What is the process? And we went, in his interview with Mr. Larson, we went through policies and procedures. I provided him with copies of policies and procedures. And there's policies and procedures like how you're going to, in child exploitation, for example, and what they do and what they follow up on. And so you ended up with a bunch of different, like juvenile section and the CACU, and they all have their own policies and procedures, but they mostly have to do with felony offenses against children. Nobody really looks at the misdemeanor offenses against children. And then I asked, well, how do you assign these cases? Because you can't find anything in policy on when a CYFD referral comes to APD, what should APD's response be to it? And so I got that information from a former commander of the Crimes Against Children unit and from a sergeant in the Crimes Against Children unit who told me what the policy was. But it's an unwritten policy, and there's no way to follow. And that policy is what? That a civilian reviews it? Well, so they have two people. They have a part-timer and they have a full-timer civilians who are trained by the sergeant in CACU to review the referrals when they come in, and that person is instructed that if there's anything questionable, you need to come to me, the supervisor, to see if we need to go out on it, okay? For whatever reason, this civilian, when this referral came in, decided that it didn't meet the criteria for assignment, and so it got pushed off to the side, and nobody went out and followed up on it. And that's troubling to me because I can understand, you know, one of the things the sergeant said to me is, look, we need to look for a solution, but we can't be pie in the sky solution. Oh, we're going to make everything perfect and this is how we're going to do it.
We're going to investigate every single complaint.
You know, Johnny's not going to school, hasn't gone to school for 2 weeks. Chances are the police aren't going to go out on that. You know, CYFD or Children in Needs of Services should be going out on those types of referrals. But, you know, certainly if somebody's attempting to kiss a 9-year-old girl, yeah, that's something that should be looked into. And, you know, in hindsight, everybody agrees with that.
Yeah, because she's dead. But that doesn't mean that they shouldn't have agreed with it before.
Exactly.
You know.
Exactly. And so I'm hoping that when we start to look, and you know, so one of the troubling things about this is that after Omari Varela, APD spent $50,000 on a consultant to look at all of these things to see what things are being missed with regards to referrals, calls to the police department involving children of neglect or abuse or whatever. And nobody caught the fact, well, what do you do with a CYFD referral? It should be very simple. You should be able to go to the manual and say, oh, I have a CYFD referral. What should I do? Right? Nobody ever caught that there was no policy regarding that and how they're going to do it. And so there are a team of specialized officers out there called the CARE unit, and there are about 60 of them that are trained, and it's child abuse response something or another. And so what I would like to see, at least on the basis of the policy, and I've just thrown this around in my head, is that, number one, we get a standalone policy in the Albuquerque Police Department that has to do with CYFD referrals, exactly what is going to be done with a referral, how it comes into the police department, who reviews it, who's responsible for reviewing it.
What's the criteria?
You have a layer of supervisory review over that. So let's say a civilian, and there's nothing wrong with a civilian intake worker looking at a referral and making a decision. I mean, that happens all the time, even at the state, in CYFD at the statewide central intake, SCI. They do that all the time. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as they're trained to recognize and look for the things in the referral. But there has
somebody's overseeing it.
There has to be a layer of supervisory review that if you don't send it for investigation, I, as a trained supervisor, want to know why it's not being sent for investigation. Period. I realize they're absolutely overwhelmed. They get probably 1,000 referrals a month. But you have to understand that of those 1,000 referrals a month, many of them are already investigated by CYFD. There's a 4-page document from CYFD included in this investigation, and you can see that they do go out on almost everything. They have Child Protective Services workers that get assigned, for example, that children were dirty. Their hygiene was bad.
And the reason why a community, a system of laws exists to pay attention to that is because it's a precursor to other things.
Oh, sure.
It may be an indicator of other things.
Exactly.
And that's why you can't just blow it off.
Exactly.
You know.
And so, getting back to what I was saying, you need that standalone policy, you need supervisory review. But we also need, so let's say it's something that doesn't go to CACU or child exploitation or the juvenile section or whoever's responsible for following up. Why can't those cases that maybe they aren't going to really have enough time to do or they can't look into, why can't they go to the 60 to 80 trained care officers as a dispatch call for service through dispatch to the uniform officer when they're on duty? It doesn't make any sense. And even then, if they're not going to do something, man, make it a dispatch call for service. Make a uniformed police officer go out there and talk to somebody, and I realize they are overwhelmed, and I realize there's only 400 officers in the field, and they get all of these different referrals, but you can't put the responsibility off on specialized units to go do this. Police officers are trained, in some aspects of recognizing child abuse and neglect. They can get the further training through the CARE training here in Albuquerque, APD. There's no reason why, at least at a minimum, there's a record that an Albuquerque police officer went out there and talked to somebody. And that whole bit of hogwash about, we're violating people's rights, that policy is very clear. When you are dispatched on a child abuse or neglect, you entitle your report child abuse or neglect. That keeps the public from being able to access anything on that child. It's protected by state law. Nobody's getting it unless you're the parent, guardian, custodian, caseworker, guardian ad litem. Something related somehow with that case, you can get it. But even if you go out and you don't substantiate child abuse or neglect as part of your investigation, you just write that into the body of the report, that it wasn't substantiated or the child denied it, whatever. But the fact that you titled it child abuse or neglect, that report is kept from the public. It's not a public record. And so that whole bit about we would be violating families' rights, it's hogwash.
Well, and the letter is very well written relative to those points, I thought. I think that it's important to understand the distinction in this letter, which is that CYFD said because this man was not a relative, they could not go forward. But they did go out and investigate to make sure that was the case. They then, because they didn't have jurisdiction, sent it to APD, who dropped the ball. And that's what APD exists to do. I mean, it's one of the abusing our children is one of the things that's really high on our cultural list of pay attention to the law. So it sounded to me like they were laying everything off on CYFD, when in fact CYFD was barricaded from pursuing it any further. And they did do the work.
There's a boyfriend and they have no jurisdiction over that. So.
Well, it bothers me that they were so dismissive and insulting to CYFD when they did the work, and APD did not.
Well, it's just like you said, of the thousands of cases that come in, the vast majority of them are handled by CYFD. It's the case they can't handle for some reason, but they still have a concern about that they refer. So you can't dismiss that just out of hand because it was an attempted to kiss. You have no idea what the circumstances.
So because he wasn't successful, it's not a crime. Really?
No. Okay. Any other comments on this particular case?
I would just recommend that before it goes to the board, the discipline's put in there. That's all.
Okay, I'll pass it on to Ed.
What's the status within APD of this case? Is it still under investigation? Have they?
The criminal investigation has been completed and turned over to the prosecuting authorities. So there isn't anything.
Is the administrative part of it done for IA?
The only thing we had was the citizen police complaint, so that would wrap it up as far as any administrative investigation.
So if we didn't have Mr. Larson filing a complaint, we would have no voice in this case.
And I'll be honest with you, I mean, when Mr. Larson filed a complaint, and I told him straight up, I'm not even sure what I can do with this, because I wasn't sure what I could do with it. And it turned out to be a really informative, long, and progressive investigation, and it was enlightening to me. There's just certain pills that are hard to swallow, and this was one of them. And when you start digging into stuff, it was basically as you said, a dismissive attitude. It was kind of like, so what if we gave you the wrong information? And with regards to Selena, the irritating thing to me about that was she waited 6 weeks. She found out the information was wrong on the 27th or 28th of January, and she waited until the middle of March.
When the reporter called her.
When the reporter called her, before she admitted to the reporter that no one had gone out. And, you know, when you tout the fact that you want your division to be transparent and integrity is the utmost importance to you, and on and on and on and on, yet you're aware of the fact that your public information officer gave bad information, yet you wait 6 weeks to contact the reporter to do the retraction. You should have corrected the record within days. Within days. There's no excuse for waiting 6 weeks and only upon when you're asked. So, you know, she works directly for the chief of police. We can recommend whatever discipline we want to recommend. My understanding, and I can't say whether this is true or not, but I have heard that Officer Duran is no longer the public information officer for the Albuquerque Police Department. He's been reassigned to another assignment, so I don't know if it was a preemptive strike. I don't know if it was, maybe he was just frustrated and requested a transfer. I don't know the details surrounding it, but I understand that he's no longer in public information.
Well, it concerns me that a case like this, that were it not for Mr. Larson's complaint, we wouldn't touch at all. So structurally, what does that tell us? What are the lessons to learn from that? That's a bigger issue, you know, to me. It's fortunate for us that we had somebody complain. But this girl died, and there was no civilian oversight of any of that, and there was lying, you know. So what does that tell us about the oversight process and what holes still exist? That's scary to me. It's really scary to me. I don't know how we address that, but I think it should be part of our discussions, perhaps with policy, is to say, you know, how do we know? You know, maybe if there's, I don't know what the outcome would be, but I think that's probably part of what I would ask the policy committee to take a look at, is that, and any insight, you know, you guys have more hands-on insight. It's why it's so important to go through all of these letters to look for things like this. Not just because it was a girl that was murdered, but because process-wise, you know, we have to be able to say with confidence to the community, we're paying attention to all this stuff and nothing's, there's not major holes in the process. This, to me, says there is a hole in the process.
Anything else? Any other comments on this?
So I make a motion.
I just have one question. Is that, when did the chief and his command staff find out about this? I mean, they found out.
Even in there.
Chief was in a meeting with CYFD secretary in November of 2016. That was when the CYFD decided to release their 4-page summary of the investigations into the Martens children that they had dealt with. Nobody said anything at that meeting regarding whether or not APD had gone out, or it was just, hey, this is what we're going to put out there and we want you guys to be aware of it. In December of 2016, there was another meeting that was held in the chief's office wherein actually, let me go back. A couple of days after the murder, there was a briefing that was held, a chief's briefing, and Selena was in that briefing. And somebody asked if there had been referrals made to CYFD, and the CAC unit said, we'll look into that. We'll look into seeing if there were any referrals made to us and what the outcome of those were. Okay, then you have the November meeting. So August is the murder, November is the meeting with CYFD. December, there's another meeting that's held, and during that meeting in December, there's the commander from CACU, the sergeant, Fred Duran, chief of police, and I don't know if there were other people there or not. But during that meeting in December, the CACU commander or the CACU sergeant told Fred Duran that there was this referral that was made and they did not go out on it. So he had knowledge in December of 2016 that no one from APD responded to the referral. And I refer to it in the letter because it's easy as the attempted KISS referral. Yet in January he turns around and he makes up all of these convoluted stories and whatnot. So yeah, and then there was, I don't know when the subsequent meeting was, but after the information came out, the false information, the sergeant from the CACU unit contacted Selena Espinoza and said, I don't know where the newspaper got this information from, but we told you guys we didn't go out. We told Fred that we didn't go out on this referral, and it's wrong. And so according to Selena, she met with the chief. I don't know if this is accurate information or not because I'm just going off what I was told. Met with the chief, and this would have been at the end of January that she provided false information to the media, not on purpose, that she was misled, and that's kind of what the statement was.
So, but then they didn't take heed. Nobody inside the department took any action.
Not that I'm aware of,
Yeah.
not for 6 weeks anyway.
Is there any APD paper trail for what you described, of the things that you just described that APD did? And
I asked for emails from Selena regarding her exchange with the reporter, and she has not provided them to me. She indicated that she would, but I covered that by going back to the reporter. I didn't obtain the emails from the reporter because the reporter's not going to give me the emails flat out. Legal is going to fight them on it and everything else. But the reporter confirmed that the email chain actually started in March and that it took Selena about a week and a half to respond to her to set up a meeting to talk to her about the allegations.
what about in November, December, when APD was discussing this?
Did they write down that they lied?
Well, they haven't yet lied.
Yes, they just happened.
So, from all I can gather is it's only meetings that the PIO and Selena, the Public Information Officer and Selena, work in the chief's office on the 5th floor. And so, if there's some media-worthy event or something, they're all going to caucus, basically, in either the chief's office or the assistant chief's office, and they'll talk about things. But as far as written documentation, I'm not aware of
Okay. Anything else?
No, but we need to pass these.
We have to do one more case.
Yeah,
Yeah, we got one more. I was trying to move on.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. 117-17. Any comment on? I didn't have anything on this one.
No, this is the slash tires. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No,
So
I agree
those are
with
the cases investigated. Can I get a motion on them?
I move that we accept the hard work of the staff in investigating these cases and propose to the board that they accept these letters as written.
Okay. A second. Second.
All
in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. No cert cases. We'll move on from
No
there.
appeals either.
No appeals also. All right. Any other business?
Yeah, I have questions.
Sure.
The three of us and Ed met with Major Tyler about the workflow of the charts, and decided that we're going to do three different. That the problem was we were having different kinds of complaints, different kinds of cases that came before us, and we were trying to make them into one thing. So Ed took the ball and said he was going to come back to us with that. We're going to meet with Major Tyler 2 weeks after this coming board meeting to go over that and make sure that we're all in agreement on that. So I just want to give you an update because it affects this committee. I also wanted to let you know that We've invited all the mayoral candidates to come to our next board meeting, and they get 5 minutes uninterrupted, and then 5 minutes of questions, up to 5 minutes of questions from the board, and then
Great.
that's it. The idea is specifically that this is a one-issue deal. It's only about oversight and about law enforcement. And so we've gotten 3 positive responses and 1 negative so far. I wondered if we'd heard anything from Ginger on any of that.
So the mayor candidates, let's go back a little bit. When are they going to meet with us?
They're going to come to our next board meeting.
Our next board meeting.
August 10th meeting here. I just think it would be a good chance to hear what they have to say about that, and to say it out loud and in public just about this issue.
Sure.
I wondered about why there's no officer-involved shooting cases still, and still no served cases. I don't understand what's going on with this, but we keep expecting this tidal wave and it doesn't come. So
Well, it's going to come because there's more shootings. So
yeah, well,
it's going to happen.
last night, right?
Yeah.
So that concerns me, and I'm going to continue to be concerned about that. And then we wrote a letter to Ginger about the policy impasse. To my knowledge, we haven't heard anything back yet, and I wondered if, since this is when are we as a board going to do this? We're going to talk about this at the board meeting, but I wanted y'all it to be on your radar. Ginger released a report on use of force and with an addendum that was on K9. Did you get to look at any of that? Did you see any of that? That just came in the last couple of days. I got a flood of this stuff when I came back from camping, so I just wondered.
Do you have, just out of curiosity, do you have recommendations with regards to K9?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, he issued a separate thing, so I assume he did, but I don't know what was changed. I just wondered if the staff had seen any of it yet.
I haven't seen it.
And then there was a note from Elizabeth Martinez this morning about, let me see. Yeah. She's trying to make sure, and I want to say one more thing. About your concern about the city council, I think we also, in this group, decided that we were not going to do dead ends anymore. And we had a meeting with the Department of Justice and said that. We said we are tired of sending stuff just to the chief. So as an example, the letter to Ginger went to everyone. Individual city council members, Ginger, Elizabeth Martinez, everybody. Okay, and I think that's what's supposed to happen with everything we do. And that's what we agreed to in this room. So if that's not happening, I need to know that it's not happening, because we agreed with you a long time ago about this and decided that we were going to make sure not only that the city council got it, but that all the other parties to this, including, as a matter of fact, the letter to Ginger was sent to all of the amici as well.
That's
So, I want everybody and their mother to know that what we're doing here and why.
I think that's one of my concerns, just as a citizen, is that I believe in the Police Oversight Board and the CPOA, but I am concerned that with the lack of public accomplishment, that it's going to be, just perceived as just another process that has no substance to it. And I think that by doing that, by bringing it out, people will know, and they will. I think they will be excited about it.
I have not, to this point, sought out media attention on these issues, but I have received calls, and I have responded to those calls with every piece of information I can legally give them. I think that that's an option we should keep close to us. I've been invited several times from the very beginning for 2.5 years, almost, on this to speak to the editorial board. I am not above doing that. I'm not below doing that. I'm ready to do that. I thought perhaps that it would be a great opportunity to rattle the leadership of the police department and say, step up, come with me, come on.
Yeah, now's a good time too.
Yeah.
I mean, with all the political stuff going on,
Right.
it might be a good time to.
So it's something perhaps we should talk about as a board. I have been giving the police a chance to step up and do the right thing by turning up the volume and turning up the heat as much as possible. But, you know, I spent my life doing public relations and media stuff. So for causes that I believed in, and I believe obviously in this, we all do. And it may be time. It may be time to do that. I'm not going to do that just because I'm chair. I'm going to make sure that the board is with me on that.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm ready for that. I mean, I think you've seen an increase in the amount of coverage that we've gotten, an increase in, and that's what happens, is you have a problem, you say it out loud. And you give people an opportunity. You create, the mayors get to visit, the mayoral candidates get to visit. All of those things add to the value and give opportunities for talking points.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff that Charles has done to put videos out there helps as well, you know, in terms of getting people to understand what's going on. I think that as far as the general public is concerned, I'm not too sad about the fact that, I mean, there's so much going on in the country right now. I think there may be overload in terms of all the things you might be actively involved at and angry with. But I do believe that we are, the volume has gone up, I think. And I think perhaps it should go up more. So I don't know what you think about it.
No, I agree. Like I said, it's a perfect time.
Yeah.
There's no formal policy within the board for how the public relations is handled?
Well,
that's a question.
Go ahead.
Well, because I've done this for my life, okay, so Beth, when she was chair, said she did not want to do that and deal with that stuff. She didn't want to talk to the press because of her work.
Yeah.
Her work was, you know, investigative and stuff. She was in court a lot. She didn't want that coming back on her. So the board decided that I should do that.
Okay.
And that doesn't prevent anybody on the board from speaking to the media if they wish. But the direct is to get them to talk to me so that we have one source and do that. It's not okay with me, and it shouldn't be okay with the board, that I do those things without their blessing. So when I agreed to be chair, I said, I want to turn up the volume. I'm okay with being chair as long as it's okay with you that I turn up the volume and I increase the heat.
Well, but I think you've touched on the issues here, and that is, if you have a designated person from the board speaking, then I think the board needs to sort of tacitly support that position, and I do that. But on the other hand, you also mentioned that there's nothing to prevent individual board members from speaking.
Nor should there be.
No, I don't think there should be, but it seems to me that there ought to be a coordinated attempt.
Yeah, absolutely right.
And and I don't know that there's time to have a board meeting before every announcement. So
no, but I think that if there were, I wouldn't have a problem calling a special meeting. We did it when who was the IPR guy, Chavez, the first name Ronaldo Chavez, when he filed his thing, we immediately had a board meeting and said we need to ask that the FBI investigate this.
Right.
And because we're not going to trust anything that comes from anybody else, okay? And so anyway, that's an example of doing that. So I think I'll just bring up at the board meeting that I have been invited to talk to the editorial board. I also shouldn't go by myself. There should be other board members that come with me to do that. We can have a quorum, of course. But we'll bring it up and make sure, because I think that they have lots of questions and we have lots of obligations to the public to be straight about that.
Yep, I agree. All right, any other comment? All right, our next meeting, I was looking at the calendar. We meet on the
10th of August.
I should be the 11th of September.
Just a second, let me get a calendar.
It's got to be before that.
That's
That
during
overlaps with NACOL.
Yeah,
Right.
it does. It's got to be before that. Actually, our meeting in September
POB meeting's the 21st.
is the 21st. So
We could
we
do
could
that
do it
as well.
either on the 18th or the 4th, because we'll be in Spokane.
On the 12th?
Yeah.
Well,
That week, that whole week.
well, 4th isn't that Labor Day weekend? The
Yes.
September 4th, so it would have to be the 18th.
18th. Okay.
And it has to be in the afternoon, because well, it could be the 19th. That's a Tuesday.
Yes. Wait.
It just won't give you, if you have anything that you're wanting on the main POB agenda, you would not be able to.
Okay, if we're gonna do it on Monday, I have to do it in the afternoon.
Let's do it on Tuesday.
What she's saying, you can't get
It's
on.
fine. I mean, I'm just saying, if there was something you absolutely wanted on the main POB agenda, you would not have the time to do that, so.
Not, when on the 5th you would.
Yeah, on the 5th you
On
would,
the
but not
5th
on
you
the 18th, 19th.
Yeah, let's do it on the 5th, which gives her time to publish it without any issues.
Yeah, and I could do any
Yeah.
time.
I don't know why I'm nodding my head, because I'm just watching.
No, you did the right thing. Nod your head. That's okay.
And do it at 10 o'clock.
Yeah, 10 o'clock.
So the 5th, 10 a.m.?
Yeah. That's what I'm looking at. Okay. That way Michelle will have time to publish it that
Yeah.
Friday. And gives us 72 hours that we need. Okay. All right.
All right. Oh, I have one more question, I forgot.
Oh, good thing nobody adjourned yet.
There was an article in the paper about your IPRA stuff, Mr. Harrison. And in it, I thought I read that there was some concern about getting records from us, from the CPOA.
Yes, they did.
Where is that? Do we know? Well, it made me concerned, because I thought, what is it and why doesn't he have it? So, do we know?
No. Let's let Ed answer that question.
All right.
All right. All right.
Okay, I make a motion to adjourn.
All right.
Second?
Second.
Yes?
So, Joanne, I asked Ed about including the discipline in the
Yeah.
letters, and he said that he included it as an attachment to the letter, and the bottom of the letter should indicate enclosure unless Michelle didn't add it as he instructed her to do.
So,
So did you just get a letter without the attachments?
Right. There was no.
no, there was an attachment. There was another file on
yeah,
SharePoint.
yeah, right.
There was another file, but it didn't say in the letter, and it
Right.
didn't say, as I saw on the letter, that there was an attachment or what it was.
Yeah.
Oh, there should say attachment
Okay, well,
on the bottom of the letter.
They're
and
two
then
separate
When you
pieces.
get your letter, it
Sure.
will have the attachment with the recommended discipline on it.
Yeah, that's what I remember, that you
Yeah.
guys had said, that it was all, that there was the recommendations were always going to the chief, but they were going as an attachment to the letter, and you decided that you would include the attachment with the civilian.
but it doesn't reference the attachment
On the letter.
in the letter
I'll
itself.
make sure before everybody gets those that it references the attachment.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.